Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Sitting across the console from me today, 2 of the 5 members of the Banjo Players Blues creators. This is the band High Fidelity. They're on Rebel Records. We have Jeremy Stevens and Corrina Rose Logston. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Bob. Good to be here.
Glad to be here.
I got to listen to your album. Your publicist sent this to me, and I had an opportunity to start listening to the songs. Then, of course, distractions happen. The phone rings, or you have to go do something, or you're answering emails, or whatever it is. So it took me about 2 or 3 times to get entirely through this album. Now, with me, I start over because I don't want to miss anything. Wow. Talk about some tight vocals. Talk about some musicianship. How did you guys get together? And now, I heard your 2 story before the show, how you 2 met, but how did High Fidelity get together?
Well, our friend Kurt Stephenson, he's the banjo player in the band, the primary banjo player on the records. He and I have been friends since about 1999. Always sort of wanted to have a band together, or, play as much together as we could. And in 2014, he said, why don't we put a group together? He knew Corrina as well, and Corrina and I were, let's see.
We were engaged then.
We were engaged, That's right. I was trying to remember. Yeah.
He wanted to make sure you got it right.
That's right.
Yes. So he said, why don't we put something together here, and maybe we can enter the Spigma Band Contest. We did, and we actually won the contest that year, and then people started wanting to book us and things like that.
Let's explain Spigma for a second.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that's the Society for the Preservation of Bluegrass Music in America. They're sort of an organization that I think predated IBMA, the International Bluegrass Music Association, and they've continued on down through the years. They have a couple of conventions every year, and they have the name of the International Band Contest.
Championship, actually.
Oh, championship. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So that's what it is. That's what we entered. That's what we won there in 2014.
Is that what got you your record deal?
Well, I think it was definitely the first step in in all of that. I want to mention with Spigma, for those who aren't familiar with it, a lot of bands have actually gotten started that way, or have kind of gotten on the map playing that band contest. A lot of folks that people would remember, namely one of the most famous would be Alison Krauss, won the Spigma contest in the 80s. After that, we were all in different places career-wise. So we sort of, entertained the idea of booking a few things over the next couple years or so. And in 2016, we had a booking that we wanted to do, but they said you had to have a commercial record out because there were so many bands that would sort of put together groups, and they used a radio station to promote the shows. So they said they had a hard and fast rule that you had to have a commercial release, so they knew the band was actually going to stick around by the time the show rolled around. The folks at Rebel Records, Mark and Dave Freeman, heard that self-titled record that we did in 2016, contacted Jeremy, said they were very interested in in having us join the Rebel family. We thought about it and talked to him a long time, and it's just been a really wonderful relationship ever since.
How did Vickie Vaughn, who plays bass, and Daniel Amick, who I guess is mandolin and guitar?
Yes. A lot of times on stage we travel, we play as a four-piece because Kurt is often unable to travel. So Daniel sort of is the primary mandolin player, but on stage he's often playing the guitar and I'm playing the banjo. So
Gotcha.
That's kind of how that's worked out for us. So Kurt, Corrina, and myself were sort of the original core, and we needed a couple other folks. Corrina knew Vickie, Kurt knew Daniel, and we rounded out the band that way. We had some other folks that we knew, and they just weren't available to do the contest when we did it. So this is the original five.
That's
we got
right.
Vickie and Daniel in it, and I think the Lord had his hand on it because it's a really great crew.
Musical influences, when we talk about bluegrass music and gospel music, because you've got some gospel cuts on here, along with some traditional bluegrass cuts, and we're going to play a couple of them during the show here and talk about them. Musical influences, was there one group or one particular artist? I mean, was it like a Lester Flatts, Earl Scruggs, the Smoky Mountain Boys? Was there somebody that just made an impact on either one of you when you guys how did you get started with bluegrass?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting because the story is a little different for each of us as members, but particularly with High Fidelity, it all goes back to that Spigma contest. We got the group of folks together because of who was available. We focused on the material and the artists we did because of what we felt was not being represented in the bluegrass landscape at the time. So for High Fidelity in particular, our interests and our loves, where our influences and the things we were interested in coincided with what we thought was underrepresented in the bluegrass landscape, was Reno and Smiley and Jim and Jesse, Charlie Monroe. And at the time, we weren't hearing a lot of Louvin Brothers type music represented either. So we pulled from those influences for the band's general influence, I guess.
In fact, I noticed you had a guest artist on the show, Jesse McReynolds, who I actually got the pleasure of seeing a few years ago at the Hoedown on the Harpeth music festival. That was my first experience with Jesse, and I went, I had to go, who is this guy, and start researching. That's quite a legend to have on your project, too.
Corrina and I have been very fortunate to be members in his band for the last 3 years, and got to know Jesse a lot, made a close connection with him, and he was excited to be a part of this project.
Now, were you at the Hoedown on the Harpeth with him?
I don't think so. Me and Jeremy started performing with him in 2016.
Okay.
And I think somewhere around 2018, after he had one of his major health concerns with an aneurysm that burst, I think at that point he quit doing as much touring type stuff.
Yeah, it would have been right around that time, too. Let's talk about, first of all, you have another album that came out before Banjo Player Blues, or as you like to call it, Banjo Playing Blues. Tell us a little bit about that. And that was your first release. Was that with Rebel, or was that something you guys did on your own?
So our first release was a self-titled project, High Fidelity. We did that in 2016. Then we did our second album was for Rebel. That's called Hills and Home. And this, our latest project, which has come out this year, is Banjo Players Blues.
When you started to put this album together, 13 cuts on there, how did you come about picking these songs? Because, there's a lot of great material. And as I said, you've got some gospel cuts. When you listen to it, you've got, of course, Turkey in the Straw. We talked about that before the show. I mentioned to you guys before, that song, at the tempo that it's being played, you couldn't do a jig to it, but you could do a cardio workout.
That's Corrina's doings on that one.
Did you just say, hey, let's go, and this is how we're going to do it?
Well, Bob, we always have this sort of thing in High Fidelity where we want to take everything to the next level. And so if you go back and you listen to the self-titled record, we kind of set up the general format for how we like to do material and the type of songs that we like. And one of those things we sort of established then was that we liked hoedown type fiddle tunes for instrumental features. And so we did one on our self-titled record. We did one on Hills and Home. And I just felt like what can we do to take this a step up? And it just felt like the tempo needed to get cranked up a little bit, especially if you're doing sort of the standard turkey in the straw. You know, you don't want someone to say, oh, they just recorded Turkey in the Straw, and it's just kind of...
It's an emulation, and yeah.
Yeah, you want to be able to put a little stamp on it and say, well, how can we make it our own?
We also included twin banjos on that. Kurt and I are both playing banjo, and we do the single string in harmony type of thing there at the end. Daniel actually was featured on guitar on that one. He took a break on it as well, which was the first on one of our records to have Daniel actually doing some of what he does on stage. So
yeah, I think when it comes down to choosing material for us, it's kind of a complicated process because with this band in particular, High Fidelity, we focus on the niche of bluegrass music from the 1950s and early 60s, what we call the High Fidelity era, the time when you would see the words High Fidelity written on record albums and things like that. And not that we're trying to copy anything from then, which in particular we're not trying to emulate any one artist or anything like that, but sort of do things in that style, referencing things in the audio recording format that bands would come in and do. You know, we go in there and track all in one room live with very minimal isolation. And so when it comes to choosing our material, we try to choose things that fit that era in terms of the song composition, the style of how we're playing as instrumentalists and vocalists, how we're singing it. And so that's how we end up with the songs that we end up with. Because we don't want to I almost said regurgitate. That's such a horrible word.
But that's okay. We can use it.
It's like we don't want to rehash something that's already been done so amazingly by our heroes and stuff like that. We tend to focus on material that is either people don't know or they've never heard, really obscure recordings. We haven't gotten into any original writing yet, but we try to dig up old things and kind of redo them in our style, and like I was saying before, put our stamp on them and see what we can do with them.
We're going to take a break, get a word in for one of our sponsors, and we'll come back. We're going to have some more conversation with Jeremy Stevens and Corrina Rose Logston, members of the bluegrass group High Fidelity. On our exit here, let's play the first cut off their album, Old Home Place.
Ago when I left my old home place, seeking what life would behold, I bid them farewell and left on my journey, not thinking of the stories that mother had told. Singing by the fireside as darkness would steal up the lane. Old days gone by and my memories still linger. I'm going back to my old home again. Each night I had missed Mom kneeling by my bedside, praying I'd always go straight. When I get back, her smile will be missing. She won't be there to welcome me home at the gate. It's been many years since I drifted away.
This is Corey Lee Barker with MC1 Nashville. Coming live from Nashville, Tennessee, you're listening to the business side of music with this crazy guy, Bob Bender, hosting this show.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rule Book, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics, all written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message. Thanks.
Hi, this is Tom Sabella, the creator, founder, and co-producer of the Business Side of Music podcast. It's loyal listeners such as yourself that make our podcast successful. Take the time to sign up for our weekly newsletter. Not only does it contain information on upcoming podcast episodes, but also informative tidbits on the music industry and even bonus items that we give away. All you have to do is sign up at businesssideofmusic.com and we will send you Larry Butler's new singer-songwriter rulebook. That's it. All you have to do is go to businesssideofmusic.com, sign up, and we will send you Larry Butler's new book. Thanks to all our loyal listeners. We love you.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, Nashville, Tennessee. Sitting across the console from us, Jeremy Stevens and Corrina Rose Logston, members of the group High Fidelity. This album, which is released on Rebel Records, came out this year, 2020?
Yes.
One of the things that I noticed was you have some cuts here. You have the breakup songs. You have the perfect breakup songs. The first one, of course, is You Made the Break, which I listen to that one. I go, man, they just don't write songs like that anymore. And then, of course, the other one is Take My Ring from Your Finger. Mm-hmm. How'd you pick those?
Well, those are both relatively obscure songs. Particularly You Made the Break was recorded by Paul and Roy, the Tennessee River Boys, for Mercury Records back in the 1950s. It's a song that I have on 78 and just thought it would make a great bluegrass song, you know. So, and I'd recorded it before with a friend of mine, Tom Minty, up in Maryland with Patuxent Records. Yeah, I just thought we did it just to mandolin and guitar, and I thought this would really be a good song with a full bluegrass band. So we don't seek out the breakup songs necessarily, you know. For secular material like that, we just try to find something that fits the style, you know, and doesn't at least have a too negative of a message. So.
Yeah.
I do think that, you know, that when you listen to those songs, though, it's kind of like, okay, you're getting the message across, and in a way, they're kind of happy. You know?
Yeah, right.
The end result.
That's right. You know, echoing what Jeremy said, a lot of our secular material, especially up until this record, we try to keep it on a positive note. It's a lot of stuff that talks about themes with home and things like that. When just looking for the good material, things that really spoke to us, I think those two just kept coming up. I think Kurt made the comment, he said, Corrina, you sing the angriest tenor on You Made the Break. I hope people can identify with that.
Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that there's no love lost here. It's,
not at all.
Yeah. And then, of course, we've got the cut that when I first started listening to it, I went, okay, they're doing dueling banjos. And, of course, everybody knows that song from the movie Deliverance. Mm-hmm. But you actually, from what I understand in the notes that I received, you took the 1955 version.
Yes.
Of Arthur Smith and Don Reno.
That is correct. So Arthur and Don composed the song together, recorded it with a 4-string tenor banjo and a 5-string banjo. Of course, Don was playing the 5-string and Don the tenor. And it is the version that Eric Weisberg learned what he made into, you know, dueling banjos for the movie, and which he credited Reno and Smith for it Warner Brothers, however, did not. And I don't think it... In fact, a guy was telling us, someone that interviewed us last week actually said that he interviewed and talked to Eric about that, and he did not agree with them, crediting Arthur Smith. Of course, Arthur took him to court, and he won.
And that's why we're going to make sure that everybody knows that it was Arthur Smith and Don Reno.
That's correct. Yeah. And Arthur owned the copyright on it. I think maybe Don had sold his part to him at some point. But nevertheless, Feudin Banjos is the original title, and we went back to the original recording, also which I have on 78.
So Feudin Banjos was not the original title.
Correct.
Yeah, it
right.
was. Wow.
We didn't really add anything to it. It's just a little bit more obscure, and it was something we really wanted to just record and bring to our audiences today.
So the rendition that you play, is this really the original composition? Because
yes.
it is actually different in many aspects from Dueling Banjos.
Oh, sure. You can look up the original recording, and you won't find a lot of difference in ours and the original. And that's intentional, really.
Yeah.
Part of what we do in High Fidelity is educational, as well as entertaining, and carrying this older style of music forward into today. And so occasionally, we do some things like that. We just wanted people to hear it.
I think a lot of that too, the reason we recorded it, because so many folks in our audiences had said, do you have this on record? Do you have this on record? It's a great song to end a show with or to bring to a stage show. And we really didn't have any intention on recording it because it was so identical, really. We felt what we were doing was identical to what Don Reno and Arthur Smith had. But so many people said things about it. We thought, this might be good to include on a record. And for those interested in the history of it, it's a fascinating study on copyright law when you start looking at how the song sort of the title morphed several times. And the lawsuit itself is really interesting to think about. And I think it's sort of made a stamp on music business in a big way.
When you find these songs and you start listening to them, is it difficult to find original recordings of these? I mean, do you have to dig deep? Is this something you can find on YouTube, or do you have to go to old record stores or find friends, or how do you find this material?
Some of the stuff you can find on YouTube, and some of it you can't. I have a relatively large record collection and am connected with a lot of other record collectors. So, there are a few things that we've recorded that you can't find. And if I find something on YouTube, it makes me a little leery to do it. But I count the views and I think about it. I'm like, well, and then look and see if anyone else has recorded it. So there's sort of a vetting process for the material that we end up actually recording. So, there's a lot of thought process that goes into that sort of thing. But at this day and time, it's really hard for anything that was recorded at any time not to be somewhere on the internet.
And, it sort of goes back to, I guess, me and Jeremy and Kurt, we were all, sort of speaks to one of your other questions, we were all raised around this type of music. And so when you spend so much time in it and you've listened to it in your childhood and you've studied it, trying to master your instrument or things like that, you just end up digging deeper and deeper to try to get more inspiration and see what else is out there. It's almost a sickness. So High Fidelity has been a great format for us and a great excuse to dig further into stuff and say, what else is out there and what can we bring to the table in the 21st century?
But let's talk about that for a minute, because a lot of music has its influences from other things. Bluegrass really kind of goes back, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it goes back really to the Celtic world. The Irish and the Scots brought their music over, wound up in the Appalachians, bluegrass music evolved. It almost seemed to go away for a while. bluegrass. And it's really, I don't want to say it's made a resurgence, but what it's done, at least in my impression, is it's made a firm footprint. It's not going anywhere. And you're really starting to build bigger audiences with this music. And people are discovering the amazing beauty of bluegrass music.
Yes, I think in the mainstream, it's definitely made a little bit more of a foothold in the last 20 years or so. Being someone that's loved bluegrass my whole life, I'm, of course, highly aware of bluegrass music being very strong since its basic inception in the 1940s. It's never gone away, but to the mainstream, yes, I would say it faded a lot probably in the 70s and 80s. Definitely, as I said, has made a foothold more mainstreamly in the last 20 years.
Are you finding new audience? And when I say new audience, are you finding a younger audience that's appreciating this music and coming to your shows?
I'd say definitely, Bob. One of the things that we really strive to do in High Fidelity is to have something for everybody, because as being young adults, we want people in our age group and younger to understand and be able to identify with and find cool things about the music that we love so much. And we've been really pleased with the kind of audience variety that we end up having at our shows. It's oftentimes, it's the whole, spans the gamut. There'll be young kids and teenagers, and I guess we do have some in the middle-age group, and then of course folks that have grown up listening to it in the older generation, and beyond that, elderly folks will be there. It makes us feel good because we're intentionally, trying to give something to everybody out there.
We're going to take another break, get another word in for a sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to see what's next for High Fidelity, what's going on, especially in this crazy COVID-19 world we're all living in right now. And as we go out, let's play a little cut, track 11 on the album, Helen.
It seemed that my heart went your way. Love was the word that told the story. I wish you were here with me today. You told me that I need not worry, that you would always be mine. Helen, my darling, please tell me a place in your heart I'll always find. That you would always be mine. Helen, my darling, please tell me a place in your heart I'll always find. The time we are wasting, my darling, is making my heart ache with pain. But our lives are so far apart, dear, I guess I'm just hoping in vain. You told me that I need not worry, that you would always be mine. Helen, my darling, please tell me a place in your heart I'll always find.
This is Claire Ratliff with Laughing Penguin Publicity, and you're listening to the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hey, it's Chris SD from Sync Songwriter. Imagine what it would be like getting your music into the latest TV shows, movies, or ads. Your songs would not only get exposure in front of millions of viewers, you'd get paid to do it and gain a reputation as the songwriter that you are. I've been showing songwriters, composers, and artists how to get their music into TV and film for over 15 years. Collectively, they have generated hundreds of thousands of dollars from licensing their music. Their music has been on networks such as HBO, Bravo, ABC, NBC, Netflix, and more. In films or trailers such as Predator, Annihilation, Christmas Chronicles, Professor Mac, and many others. So many songwriters upload their music to websites hoping to get discovered. Unfortunately, this almost never happens with the millions of songs out there competing for attention. I show you how to get your music heard by the people who can actually make it happen for you. When you start getting your music licensed, you automatically develop a reputation in the industry. This lets you get syncs over and over again. If you'd like to discover how to connect with the right people in music licensing, just click the Sync Songwriter logo on the Business Side of Music webpage, and I'll see you there.
You're listening to the Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio, Corrina Rose Logston and Jeremy Stevens are here in the studio from High Fidelity today, Nashville, Tennessee, on a beautiful sunny day. Nice and humid and hot, and we're waiting for the thunderstorms to roll in like they do every day here. What's next for the band? We mentioned just briefly before the break, we're all kind of in this, coronavirus, touring on hold, live performance, is on hibernation. What are you guys doing right now to keep yourselves busy with the band?
I think a lot of people are sort of looking for, what is next right now. It's kind of a hard thing to figure out. But one thing that we've been really excited about is our very own venue in Nashville, the Station Inn, has been the forefront of doing these live streaming shows. I think they've been interviewed by a lot of publications because they were such a first mover in it. And they've continued to do that, and they're really committed to keeping the music coming to their audiences and to everybody that loves bluegrass and acoustic roots type music, traditional country. So we've been in touch with them about continuing that. We've got several other friends that are doing that sort of format. Richard Smith, who owns the Toonsmith studio up in Goodlettsville, he actually record all our records at his place, and he started the Nashville Tune Stream, where they are featuring a lot of local groups and stuff like that.
Along with Brad Bench.
That's right, along with Brad Bench, who
and that's
engineers
called,
the
what is
records.
it called?
The Nashville Tune Stream. I think we're all sort of looking to see, where can music go in the streaming platforms. Speaking specifically for High Fidelity, we have just released this record. It's a unique time to release a record. It came out on June 12th, 2020. And so we're sort of focusing on, we've done several videos and are just kind of seeing where this record is going to go in this sort of climate, because traditionally our live shows have been a huge vehicle for selling records, but we've had a really amazing response on the web and through our web store and stuff like that. So I think we're all anxious to see where it's going to go, Bob.
And not only a very unique time, and I'm going to say a very unique time to release an album, but a CD on top of that, which I'm old school, so please put a CD in my hands anytime with the liner notes and the booklet and the pictures, because I think that's so important. Mm-hmm. Is this available as a digital release too?
Yes, it is. You can find it at all the major streaming outfits, as well as digital downloads and all that sort of thing. Of course, the downloads is sort of fading out as well, but yeah, it's available at any place that music is consumed.
Yeah, the only thing we don't have on it, which we want to explore in the future, is a vinyl release. So
absolutely,
I know that's sort of coming back, and us being record collectors, we always like to have some kind of physical product, and I think that's an interesting aspect of the music business that's opening back up.
Yeah, because I think in a way that's a little bit of a lost art, mm-hmm. is the physical product, whether it's vinyl or it's CD. the artwork is always something to look at as you're listening to the music, the liner notes. And I've talked about this on the show before. I always want to know who's on the project, you know.
Sure.
And then when I read and I see like Jesse McReynolds is on this, I naturally gravitate to that cut. I want to listen to that cut several times. Is there one track, and I'm going to ask each one of you this, is there one track on this album that's your favorite?
I'll let Corrina answer that first.
I've got to tell you, Bob, you mentioned the cut with Jesse, and that is my absolute favorite on this record. When I was 3 years old, one of my favorite records, well, I should say my very first favorite album I ever was aware of consciously was when I was 3 years old, and it was a Jim and Jesse record called In the Tradition. When I picked up the fiddle when I was 14, I said I got to see Jesse at a music festival, and I said, I just want to get good enough to play with him because he's just one of my heroes. And in 2016, I got to start playing with Jesse, and then to get him on a actual, to be able to have him on a cut with the group that I've helped found and all this stuff, it's just absolutely mind-blowing. And I think the adrenaline of all that stuff played into the quality of the cut that we got. I remember tracking it that day, and it seemed so easy. It just felt like we were in a groove that you could just cut it with a butter knife or something.
It doesn't hurt when you have someone like Jesse of his
Right.
caliber, who's a legend, who just comes in and makes it so easy.
Absolutely. And I told Jeremy and Brad, our engineer, I said that singing with Jesse McReynolds on this was one of the easiest things I've done in my entire life. I don't know if it's because I've listened to so much Jim and Jesse or what, but it's an absolute highlight in my personal recording career.
Well, I certainly echo what Corrina said about Tears of Regret with Jesse. That absolutely is one of the standouts for me. Personally, I probably, I don't know, the one that I can find myself listening over and over outside of Tears of Regret is probably his Charm and Love. And it's not really, it's the least bluegrass of all the songs on the album. But I've always loved, and it's only two guitars, no other instruments, and it's 4-part singing, with Vickie singing soprano, Corrina alto, myself tenor, and Daniel bass, and I'm playing the lead guitar, and Kurt's playing rhythm. And there's something about two guitars playing together at the same time that I've always loved, and 4-part harmony singing in the style of the old shape note type of singing, which is what that is. That I've just always loved, and his Charm and Love for that reason stands out to me. I was a member for about 6 years of the gospel group, the Chuckwagon Gang, and that's the style they sing. And this song, though not intentionally so, but is very much in their style because they're soprano, alto, tenor, bass with a guitar. So you're going to sound like the Chuckwagon Gang if you're doing that, so you can't really get around that. But yeah, definitely.
That's not a bad influence, though.
No, it's not. It's not. And so I would say his Charm and Love is probably the standout for me.
Were there any tracks that you absolutely loved that didn't make the album?
Well, we actually, when we started recording this, I guess you could answer it on several different levels. We sort of start feel like we're scraping the bottom of the barrel to find material, but then at the end of it, we're always like, oh man, we should have done this. We could do this. We could do this. You have it from that end of things. I can't think of anything in particular. Actually, the picture on the wall, the recording that we did of that came from a little bit of an earlier session than when we got into the meat of recording all this material for the album. And there were 2 other songs from that session that they just had such a great feeling to them, but it wasn't coming together on it. And I think we always have something like that too. I feel like there was another one on there where we were tracking it and it just wasn't coming together. And it's usually the ones that you don't anticipate, and usually the ones that you think, well, we'll just try this, turn out to be amazing.
Yeah.
But I can't think of anything specifically.
Yeah, I definitely had one that was an absolute favorite that I really loved, and I thought what we were doing with it was really good. I'm not going to tell you what the song was, but
you might want to do that again.
That's right. It might show up one day. I'd really hoped it would make it on this album, but it didn't.
Well, maybe it'll make it on the next one.
Maybe
Right.
so.
Right. How can people find High Fidelity? You got a website?
Yes, highfidelitybluegrass.com is the best way to find us. I think our social media outlets are linked on there. We're on Facebook as High Fidelity Bluegrass, Twitter as High Fidelity BG, and Instagram as High Fidelity Bluegrass as well.
Thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely, Bob. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you, Bob.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.
Where you at? No one's heard from you. Never used to be like this between me and you. Everyone around me keeps talking, trying to put thoughts inside my head that I already know. What a web you wove, 'cause you never come home on time. You're always too far away. You never call me through the night. I need a light, I'm dying, come save me tonight. Without you I can't seem to breathe. Without you I'm incomplete. I can't sleep at night without you by my side. Don't deserve this misery. You're killing me. You're killing me. You're killing me. When the sky clears and the storms fade and the sun rays shine through our window pane, all our picture frames are scattered all in disarray. Will you still be here pretending that it's still a game? Struggled for so long, prevailing every time. As the years go by, continue to subside. It's time to finally realize this is the end. You can't turn the page, 'cause you never come home on time. You're always too far away. You never call me through the night. I need a light, I'm dying, come save me tonight. Without you I can't seem to breathe. Without you I'm incomplete. I can't sleep at night without you by my side. Don't deserve this misery. You're killing me. You're killing me. You're killing me. Strike a match and watch the flames illuminate your face. The same face that once could infatuate me with those eyes that you used to pull me in, but now they wander and you only use them to deceive me with. Your disguises no longer hide your perpetual lies. Your true identity will self-employed eventually. No longer for your love in my blind, but it's clear to see your side has declined. You're choosing pennies over days, because you never come home on time. You're always too far away. You never call me through the night. I need a light, I'm dying, come save me tonight.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.